It is our privilege to be that land in between, a place where all peoples can come and become one. Ukala the Great, 2748 PC, stretching vast distances across deserts and grasslands from east to west. The Orgotgoson is a land at the crossroads of nearly every aspect of Efoqar civilization. Long ago, in the time of the dragons, this was the main feeding grounds for the herds that in turn fed the dragons. Before the cataclysm, the land and the animals were maintained by Firbolg clans that remain to this day. After the cataclysm, this area was ripe for the picking. Vast tracts of sparsely inhabited lands were too tempting to ignore. Generally, the would-be conquerors would overextend themselves, be unprepared for the harsh conditions, or pull back to confront issues at home. However it happened, the interlopers would always leave. But just as inevitable as their departure was that they would leave some people behind. From this hardy stock, a new society began to emerge. The Oghi named themselves for the land they inhabited. A mix of different peoples, they all became Oghi. To this day, humans remain the dominant species, but it is not uncommon to have lizard folk or gnomes in the Horde, or any other species from the north of Efoqar. For centuries, the Oghi were scattered and warred amongst themselves, raiding each other and their neighbors. The fractured nature of the society left them vulnerable to stronger, centralized nations like Shengshin, the Yak folk, or the Rock Coast Imperium in its heyday. Occasionally, a powerful warlord would rise up, like Serena the Terrible, who helped bring down the Rock Coast Imperium, but their efforts would never outlived them until Ukala the Great, almost 200 years ago. More than 200 years ago. He united most of the other tribes of the Oghi, and his eldest living child quickly brought the others into the fold, followed by the conquests reaching all the way to Hyendu in the west, while his descendants fought the orcs in the west, driving them back to their current holdings. The hordes of the Oghi are the most obvious element of their power that they wield, but their true power lies in the organization and the laws that Ukala brought into being. The communication across such vast distances is essential not only for defense, but also the cohesion of society. Laws that stretch the empire are few, but are easy to understand and strictly enforced. The land and people are brutal, but those that show their value are welcomed, making it one of the fairest and most tolerant lands in Efoqar. Untold wealth was captured by the Oghi in their numerous wars before and after their unification, and brought back from raids. Now, most of their income is derived from the east-west trade that crosses their land. However, the Oghi are self-sufficient, and that trade only adds to their wealth. In order to facilitate the movement of wealth within their lands without having to move or reveal the locations of their wealth, the Khans have begun to employ the use of enchanted silk notes in place of coins or gems. So far, these have not taken off as acceptable tender anywhere outside of the Orgotgoson. There are also untapped mineral resources below their lands that have yet to be exploited for two reasons. The first being that it simply isn't needed, and the second are the objections of the Firbolgs. The Firbolgs live in a separate society than the Oghi, despite the fact that they share land. Continuing their traditional role in the Dragon Empire, they maintain the land and in return are protected by the Oghi. The contrast between these two cultures is lost on no one who observes them. The peaceful and the deliberately plotting Firbolg, and the brutal Oghi, mounted and traveling great distances at speed. One looks inward and the other outward, and yet there is great respect between both of them. To kill or even interfere with a gardener, as the Firbolgs are called, is one of the greatest crimes in the entirety of the land.